Zach, we wanted to talk about brand today, and we were going to use a couple of companies that have been in the news a lot frequently around how people are interacting with their brand, and that is Starbucks and Chipotle, two of our absolute faves. And I don't know that I would say faves as far as like places to go or things to consume, but I think maybe just faves around how they think about brand and how we interact with these companies. I think they're probably two of the more frequent ones that we talk about.
I go to Starbucks like once a year. I don't drink coffee, but like I'm always down for a Frappuccino, which is basically a milkshake. So I may as well just... Someone's going to yell at me for saying that, but, Chipotle.
The sugar content, I'm sure, is probably about the same as a milkshake. I can't
Oh, gosh,
imagine
and like the whipped cream on top, I almost want one now, but anyway, Chipotle, that's another good brand, but I feel like Chipotle's been like hit and miss. Like I know we used to talk about this one going back to like 2022 on the podcast. I'm so glad they're in the news and we can talk about them, but I feel like the Chipotle experience has been hit and miss lately for me.
Well, I don't think you're alone there, and not to totally step on something we're going to discuss later in the pod, but yes, that's been a hot topic of conversation on social media lately is what is Chipotle doing with the brand, and are people positive or negative about it? It sort of comes back to the classic question too, is there any such thing as bad press, right? Or is it just people discussing your brand is a good thing regardless of whether it's in a positive or negative way?
Oh my gosh, I've got thoughts on Chipotle, but I'll save that for a few minutes because I know that's going to be a big talking point today. But I think one of the big things here, Gabe, as we talk about brand loyalty is, are you willing to pay more to shop with a specific brand? And I found a survey that was conducted, and overall, it broke it down by age groups, but overall it said 63% of respondents said they are willing to pay more to be loyal to a brand. And when I think about this, obviously this is going to be more the Gen Z audience here. 66% of Gen Z said they would pay more, 70% of millennials, 64% of Gen X, and then less than 50% of boomers said they would pay more to stick with a specific brand. And I think of Apple for me. I think Apple is like prime example of me willing to pay a little bit extra, especially with their laptops, which I feel like have been more competitive lately. But I remember, like, in college, back in my day, the laptops were grossly underpowered, very much overpriced, but I'm still willing to pay that premium to have that Apple brand and have that loyalty and be right inside that ecosystem.
Yes, Apple, I think, is a great example of this. And I think I might have told this story already, but I'll just say I recently bought some AirPod Pros, and you can get very good wireless headphones for a lot less money than you can buy a set of AirPod Pros for. But the way it integrates with the other Apple products, the fact that it moves from noise cancellation to some of the other, to the adaptive and some of these things, like there's some really cool features in there that actually are kind of unique to Apple. But I was willing to pay a lot more for a set of wireless headphones than I could have paid for just a random set of wireless headphones on Amazon or wherever.
I'm going to take the opposing position here.
I
used to love AirPods. I just like how they work with everything across. Like I can go device to device. They fit cool well. But so 2 weeks ago I was mowing my lawn and my AirPods died, so I swapped them out for my Bose. I think they're Quiet Comforts. I don't know the exact model, but the Bose audio quality is miles above Apple. And I feel like we might lose a viewer or two, but like I'm telling you, try the Bose ones. The audio quality is fantastic, but like the app is trash. The actual like design, I would say is, I don't want to say it's trash, but we'll say it's not as good as Apple. But
it's also not cheap. That's not a cheap option to go with. Bose headphones are also quite expensive.
Yeah, and it really made me think of what is my brand loyalty? Like, am I loyal to the Apple brand I've been so kind to, and they've been kind to me, and maybe not my wallet, or am I kind of shifting? And it actually happened again. I have HomePods in my house. I have one in my living room. I have one in my office here next to me. And then a couple weeks ago, I even looking at the Sonos Era 300 for the longest time, and finally I got one. I put that in my living room, the sound quality on that Sonos Air 300, compared to Apple is wildly better. And I expected that. I read the reviews. There's some things I don't like the lack of Siri integration, but it kind of goes back to, I'm exploring a little bit outside of this brand loyalty I've had. But if I was to buy like another smart speaker today, even though I've got this Sonos one that I've just said was amazing, I think I'd still go back to Apple.
Well, and like you said, it's because of that integration that works with other things. I know you're not a huge fan of Siri, but having that quick interaction to be able to play music via your voice and things like that. I mean, that's what we use. That's probably what we do 99% of the time with our Amazon Echoes that are sitting in the house. You
mentioned Siri, and I want to get this last comment in before we shift here, but by the time this episode is published, or even by Monday, June 10th, whatever comes first, that is WWDC, I believe. So we should hopefully have some new Siri topics to talk about in our next episode.
I'm very excited for next week's episode. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to break down what happened at WWDC and what's coming for the interplay between AI and the Apple phones, or really software update that's coming here in the near future. It's going to be really interesting.
The big thing there is this consumer, this mass market, AI is potentially coming to the millions of, I don't know how many iPhones are out there, iPads too, but there are a billion devices out there, and I'm very excited. So we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah.
But
Gabe, it's a theme, Zach. Just to say one more thing about that, it's the theme that we've talked about, which is AI will be used in the things that we use already every day, and the companies that integrate it in a smart way into those devices or software that we already interact with. That's where you're going to start to see mass adoption.
I'm very interested in the privacy component with Apple too. Apple's known for privacy.
Yeah.
OpenAI, a lot of considerations you could look at, before you take any, AI apps or platforms. But I'm really excited to see what Apple does. But again, more on that next week. Because then we won't have any hypotheticals. We'll know. But I wanted to go back to Starbucks, Gabe. So I mentioned I don't go to Starbucks much. Maybe once a year for my Starbucks milkshake, which will get me in trouble. But I know you had some ideas here.
Yeah, I frequently go to Starbucks. Most frequently, it's when I'm on the road or when I'm traveling for work, because it's easy. There's a ease of use component. And I recently read an article talking about Starbucks and kind of what's happening with their business model. And so I thought it was a really interesting just conversation around brand and how the Starbucks brand has shifted. So their store volume in what would be considered their traditional markets, so North America, has actually begun to shrink. Zach, what if you had to guess, because it feels like oftentimes there's a Starbucks on every corner, but if you had to guess the number of Starbucks in North America, what would that number be? Like just number of stores.
Well, it's funny because in my town, they opened a standalone Starbucks across the street from a grocery store that had a Starbucks. And then we have a Starbucks on campus, and then we have one in Safeway across town. So I think there's 4 or 5 of them in my town alone in a 1 mile radius, right? So
yep.
I don't know if I could give you an actual guess, but I'm guessing we're, tens of thousands.
It is tens of thousands. It's right around 17,000 is the real answer there. So it's a big number, and you're right. There's a lot of those situations. I have that exact situation in my town where there's a standalone one, and it is right next to a grocery store that has one, in it as well. So, but again, that number in North America has actually started to shrink, and Starbucks is at this kind of weird inflection point, I think, where the mobile app. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later too, but the mobile app is really what keeps me loyal to Starbucks as a brand. And that is very different from how they started. Starbucks started as a quote unquote third place, right? So that was always their thing, is they were the third place. You had home, you had work when people actually went into an office. Can't imagine what that's like, but you had home, you had work, and then you had this third place that you went to. And Starbucks was always intended to be that third place, a premium solution, a premium cup of coffee. They always charged way more than, you could go get a cup of coffee for anywhere else. But they're seeing this massive shift now where over 30% of Starbucks transactions are now done via mobile order or the mobile app. And I just thought that was a really interesting number where they've there's been this massive shift to a huge percentage. I mean, basically a third of their business is now being done via the mobile app.
So, Gabe, if they didn't have the mobile app, would you frequent Starbucks as much?
No, definitely not. I would not go there as frequently if they didn't have the mobile app. And I will tell you, it is not because they are doing a good job of sending me personalized notifications to remind me to go to that, to go to that, to go to a Starbucks. That those notifications are crap. But because of the ease of use, when I'm traveling and I, get up in the morning, I want a coffee, or I'm in an airport and I want a coffee, I don't want to stand in a giant line, and I can order ahead and then I just walk up and I pick it up and I go, right? It is super, super easy. But that diminishes their brand, and it makes it less of that quote unquote third place, because it's a very transactional relationship with them. I'm just literally walking in. Monday I had to fly early, and so I went at like 5:00 in the morning. Before I left my house, I placed my order. I pulled up, I walked in, I grabbed it. I didn't even say anything to anybody, and I left, right? So that's a very different experience than if I went in there, ordered a coffee, hung out for a little while, had some conversations with people. It's a completely different experience. And so they're really struggling with this, like, what brand do they want to be right now?
That's fascinating. I love any business that has a mobile app. With food service, I like being able to see the menu, and we're going to talk about the McDonald's app, but one of the things with the McDonald's app is like the ice cream machine's always broken, right? So like now I can use the app to see if the ice cream machine's broken or not. It just works out very well. But we have a comment here on the McDonald's app as well. I want to circle back to, but you mentioned Starbucks, 31% transactions are mobile order, McDonald's 25%, and I was just telling you before we even started this podcast that I'm going to go to McDonald's for a midnight snack and pay $3, and we'll get into that whole thing in a minute. But it's one of those things of, again, if they didn't have the app, like, it wouldn't be anything more than a business I drive by every day, right? It's not somewhere I would really frequent, but you get the mobile app and the loyalty program, and I think I have notifications off, so I don't know if McDonald's is doing any kind of mobile notifications. Again, don't overwhelm your customers.
Yeah.
But I really love any business that has a quality mobile app, right? I think quality is the big one. Like one of my local grocery stores, I'll name drop, Ridley's. They're kind of regional. They're, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah is where I typically see them. But their mobile app is terrible. Like even like when it automatically signs me out, I just kind of like groan of the whole process of having to log back in and everything. But comparing that to the Walmart app, which I think is another great app, you mentioned kind of that grab and go theme with Starbucks. Walmart has that. My Walmart was just renovated. Right when you walk in, they have a big sign that says grab and go, and it's almost like a convenience store where you can grab your stuff. If you have Walmart Plus, you can scan with your phone and check out and leave, right? It's that customer experience, and a lot of this across retail, food service is being driven by that mobile app.
Yeah. Well, and it's that balance, because you want it to be convenient for people to purchase things from you. That's a good thing, but does that degrade your brand? And I think in the case of McDonald's, they are a grab and go versus what Starbucks started as, which was intended to be more of that, hang out for a little while, enjoy your coffee, what existed in Italy, right? That was what, the Starbucks founders were really trying to recreate. So it's that, if in McDonald's case, I see it as additive, because they're just getting additional revenue that they probably wouldn't have gotten before, and there's no negative impact to their brand. Whereas Starbucks, it's starting to shift and fragment what that brand actually is.
Wasn't it Jim Gaffigan who said like nobody wants to be caught out of McDonald's? Like that's definitely like a get in and get out place.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yes, it definitely has that perception. And I was doing some research for this, I was reading through some of the recent quarterly releases from Starbucks for their financial earnings, and one of the strategic priorities that they had in there was, quote unquote, elevate the brand. And it got me thinking, like, first of all, what the heck does that even mean? But they're at this place where it's probably not good for them to they can't abandon the mobile app revenue because that's a huge portion of what they're driving in their business, but they also want to elevate the brand at the same time, which really runs counterintuitive to what they're getting with this grab and go, experience that most people are having. It's a weird dynamic for them.
It's actually funny. I was thinking, like, when was the last time I was at Starbucks? And it was actually a year ago visiting customers. Me and one of the sales guys, we met up at a Starbucks, and I got the strawberry lemonade refresher and some kind of pastry. But you better believe I used the mobile app and walked in. I had my laptop, so I was working a little bit just as we wait, and then my food was ready, and I grabbed it and we left. It was I'm thinking about that experience now, and I don't know. I feel like it could be a generational thing, but you mentioned, Gabe, like, I didn't have to talk to anyone. And I'm like, I'm all about that. Like, checking out the grocery store, self-checkout, Walmart, using the phone app. Like, I think it's an interesting way to think of the customer experience and that brand perception.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the wrap-up later, but I think it's finding that balance between ease of use and, again, making it easy for people to buy from you, but understanding how that could potentially impact your brand in a negative way if people are not interacting with it in the same way that you intended when you originally started your business. That sort of leads us to this next conversation, Zach, and around Chipotle. And you were talking about how Chipotle is changes that have happened there and things like that. And unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen all this stuff on social media of people complaining about the small portions that they've been getting at Chipotle. And that's another brand that's grown significantly over the last decade, where now they've got thousands of stores across the U.S. But are they being negatively impacted because they've grown so fast that now their brand is shifting, because instead of offering people a quality experience, they're now scrimping on ingredients and trying to just save a few pennies on every transaction? I don't think that's how they really started their business or thought about their business when they were starting out.
Wasn't Chipotle like the guac is extra? Isn't that where that meme came from, like, years ago? But
100%.
It's funny because the big thing in the news was like, oh, if you film Chipotle, they give you more food, kind of thing. And they posted on TikTok responding to this of like with like a memes with like everyone with their cameras, like the paparazzi at TikTok. The CEO came out.
That was a great joke.
Yeah, the CEO came out and he was talking about like, oh no, we're not like trying to like take any shortcuts. Like if you want extra, like you can always get extra, but if you want like extra like meats or something, you have to pay a little bit more. But they really capitalized on that attention, and it didn't change my perception of Chipotle at all. I haven't been to Chipotle in a few months. I'm a little bit more interested now, because now it's like, oh, it's all over the news. I gotta go check it out again, right? Again, I'll probably grab and go do my food on the mobile app and then walk in and pick it up. But
no, man, you got to walk in there and film them to make sure that you get as many carnitas as you can possibly get.
Well, what I should do, a little A/B test, right? I'll do the pickup and then I'll go through the line and film. But no,
I saw some great jokes around that, Zach. I sent a few of them to you, but the one that made me laugh the most was like the tiny, tiny little burrito when you just if you order online, and then this like massive, a burrito that's the size of your arm if you take your phone in. There were some fantastic jokes around Chipotle the last couple of weeks.
It's funny, Gabe, because I've never once, and I'd be curious with this whole frenzy, if this is anyone else share this opinion, I've never once been concerned that Chipotle was missing out on portion sizes.
It never occurred to me either, but then it's, like I said, it just was this thing that blew up, and there were tons of hilarious videos of people going in and, basically filming a Chipotle worker. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel bad for the poor people who are working at Chipotle, who are just like trying to, make a living, and these people are coming in and filming them to make sure that they're getting as many beans as they can possibly get. It's kind of insane, but
you gotta have that protein.
Yeah, I guess. But again, it speaks to, it does go back though to, what was Chipotle's brand originally? It was never, it was never fast food, right? It was, yes, it was quick, but it didn't have the same brand recognition as a McDonald's. You wouldn't. Jim Gaffigan says, right? You wouldn't want to be. You wouldn't want to be seen in the McDonald's. Nobody felt bad about being seen in a Chipotle. So it's what brand? What is your brand? And I do think this gets back to that, again, that age old question: is there any such thing as bad press? With all of this conversation that's happened around Chipotle, I'd be curious to see if it actually impacts their sales in a positive way, because people are now more top of mind.
I would, I think it kind of would, like, be
I would think so
positive
too.
for them. I do see the negative side of people being like, oh, don't go to Chipotle. They're not going to give you all the rice I need for my burrito bowl, or whatever that situation would be. Again, I've never experienced that. I would imagine most people have not experienced that kind of behavior now. So I'm interested. I want to go back to Chipotle now and see for myself.
Yeah. Well, and this gets back to, I think, an age-old question too of what do you want your brand to be? And that, I think, is probably the most important thing that you can answer as a business around brand is, where do you want to be on that scale? And this is where I think the Starbucks example is very interesting, because they originally had this idea of what they wanted their brand to be, and now that's starting to shift, and now they're really tied into all of that revenue that they're getting from the mobile app that they kind of can't switch, but it's resulting in a real shift in their business. Do you want to be that aspirational brand, right? That's what Starbucks used to be, but now they're really just shifting to, squeezing all of that efficiency and dollars out of the transactions that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, right?
Gabe, have you seen those conceptual McDonald's and Taco Bell stores where it's like not even it's like 3 drive-up lanes, a small kitchen kind of thing, and like a pickup window? Have you seen these at all?
I have not. No.
I'll have to send you, but I can't believe I'm just now remembering this. But basically, these fast food chains, we're looking at, what does the future restaurant look like? Do we want this dine-in area, or do we want to get people in and out as quickly as possible? And even I want to say it was Taco Bell I read this on, was they had like a drive-through lane specific for mobile app customers, just to keep people coming in and then out as quickly as possible. So I feel like, with back to the mobile apps, I feel like this big change we've been seeing. And, I've had the McDonald's app for probably a year or two now, right? It's relatively new on my phone, but, I talk to my neighbors all the time, because everyone likes to go to McDonald's for like a drink or some fries. Like, no one can deny that. But, having the app, and then there's incentives on the app, which we'll talk about too, and just having that ease of pulling up into the drive-thru and saying, hey, my code is, 123 ABC, and then getting your food is just so simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but but these two things are, there's that, it's simple, but that's a business that grew up around simplicity, right? Mm-hmm. And even if you went in to eat, it was super fast. You knew it was going to be cheap. I remember going to Taco Bell, especially when I was in high school, and just, you could go in there with $5 and feel like you're going to get, you could get a king's feast at that point, right? For $5, because it was so cheap. But that's what they built their brand around. Starbucks didn't build a brand around that. They built it around a $3 cup of coffee or an $8 frappuccino. I mean, it's not inexpensive by any stretch. So it's like you can't have both things. You can either be convenient and fast, or you can be a premium brand. But I don't think you can be both. You cannot thread the needle of all things to all people there,
Mm-hmm. It's a big question. How do I make a premium brand convenient? And that's a $1 million question there.
Well, I don't think you can. It's those two things are in, they're not in partnership with each other. So that's why I think it's really important to understand, well, what kind of business do you want to be? Do you want to be seen as a premium business? And that, if you want to do that, great, by all means. I think there's a lot of validity in that, but you have to understand that you're not going to be all things to all people, versus a business like McDonald's, which is just trying to sell as many things to as many people as they possibly can. And those are the major differences.
One item you had here, Gabe, was, does the mobile app complicate or confuse or make things annoying? And ironically enough, I've got an example here, but and this is like just total me being like the UI UX professional, but like on the McDonald's app, because why not? You can I'll go online and you can make things a meal, or you can remove things. I typically remove pickles from my McDonald's hamburgers, just not a fan. But if I remove the pickles, then it changes my size medium back to a large or a large back to a medium. So I have to go back in and like redo everything. And
that's weird.
It just goes back to your point here I wanted to bring up was, does a mobile app ever complicate or diminish that user experience a little bit?
I'm sure it does. The one thing that Starbucks does a really nice job of is it always goes back to your most frequently ordered things. So there's this nice little section of things that you've ordered in the past, because generally I'm going in and, getting a double cappuccino with my oat milk and, that's my order, right? So it's nice that it actually has that. That is one thing that they've done that I think does a really good job of personalization. But yeah, when you're just going through that initial ordering process, there are a lot of things and Starbucks is sort of the classic example of the people coming in and doing the I want the half calf with strawberry syrup and but only a little bit of caramel syrup, and they go through this ridiculous ordering process.
It's funny. I just opened up the Starbucks app here, and well, number one, it defaulted to Fashion Show Mall in Las Vegas, which I am not very close by, so don't want to pick up there. But when I click order, it defaults to the previous tab, and it says history repeats itself.
Yes,
so exactly what you just said.
Yep.
My page is like totally blank, but apparently I need to use the app. But
So Zach, as we think about kind of shift the conversation here a little bit to creating or cultivating brand loyalty, what are some of the things that you think about? Once you have decided on what you want your brand to be and how you want to interact with your customers, what are some of those things that people can do to cultivate that brand loyalty?
Oh man, Gabe, number one, we talk about this every episode, personalize the experience. So we did an episode a while back on zero-party data and how you can collect that data. And it's just another way to personalize that experience, right? So think of, Gabe, you mentioned that Starbucks does not have good mobile notifications. Think of how they could personalize that experience based on what they know about us, what you're buying. I used the Taco Bell app example a few podcasts ago, and I said I deleted it because I kept getting random notifications about stuff I'm not interested. Like they came out with I don't know what it is. It's like a quesadilla or something with like a giant Cheez-It in it. I'm like 0% interested in that thing, but I've gotten like a dozen notifications on it, and I haven't engaged with them. I haven't looked this thing up on their menu. I don't want anything to do with it, but I am just getting absolutely spammed with messaging. And part of the reason I bring that up is there was a study as well, and more than half of those who responded said that they were frustrated from receiving irrelevant offers and irrelevant marketing messages.
Yes, agreed. And it goes back to a conversation that we were having earlier, which is the Starbucks app does a really bad job of sending me personalized notifications. I constantly get notifications in the afternoon about, cold refresher drinks or, go get 5 stars today or, whatever, right? And it's totally irrelevant to how I actually use their product. They know what I buy. They know I typically buy it in the morning. And the other thing that they know is they could actually track this because I have to have location services on so that I don't end up going and buying something in the Las Vegas mall. So when you use the app, it tracks your location so that they know what stores are near you. So they know if I'm traveling because they know probably what my home area is and where my home base is. And so they could send me personalized notifications when I'm traveling to place don't forget your double cappuccino this morning or whatever. Like that doesn't feel like it's that big of a lift because they have all that information, location data, what my previous orders are and when I like to buy those things. That to me is personalization and would be leaps and bounds better than what they're doing now, which is just spamming me with completely irrelevant stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to another statistic I should share is 85% of consumers say their favorite brand treats them as an individual. So think back of that marketing message. Are you going to send Gabe and I the same Starbucks notification? No, because that refresher you mentioned is something I like, right? Like I would totally leave tonight and go buy one of these in the afternoon, whereas you're obviously more of that morning coffee person. So, Starbucks knowing this data, knowing our purchasing history, could take that personalized messages to us as individuals. And I say Starbucks, but really any business could do this, right? We talked about the zero-party data, however you collect data on your subscribers or however they engage with your products and services, personalize that experience.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great one. And I know this next one is one of your one of your faves with incentives and rewards.
Oh
so
man,
let's talk a little bit more about that one.
And this can be anything from a discount to a coupon, right? And it could be for, giving the company more data, sharing a post on social media to build that brand awareness, things like that. The one that comes to mind is Crumble. If you have the Crumble app, you can get I want to say it's like 10 crumbs for every checkbox item you do, which is liking them on Facebook, liking them on Instagram, following them on X, formerly known as Twitter, things like that, just to build that following base. But you could also do things like share your email, share your birthday, and they incentivize you with like a free cookie. And you better believe they're using all of that data. It's a great opportunity for them. And the cool thing here is, for the most part, customers like to be incentivized in some way, like to be rewarded for interacting or engaging with this company. We talked about the McDonald's app, the Starbucks app. They both have that same loyalty program built into the app where you can get points, which you can then redeem for food and drinks and things like that. And again, I think we're really focusing on the mobile apps and the experiences they provide you with, actual retail outlets today. But again, incentivizing is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And I really like those examples that you use around Crumble, because we've talked about Crumble before, and that buy a certain number and then you get a free cookie thing, right? Or get the free cookie on your birthday when you share that information. But the following them on social, giving them your email address, those are things that are really helpful for them from a marketing perspective that don't cost you any money. It's not that you have to buy a thing in order to get some future thing. You're just providing them with insight and information that's going to help them market to you better in the future.
And the thing I think we should call out here, Gabe, is Crumble doesn't have an email list of all their customers. That's not something they have. So if I go to Crumble today, or let's say, Gabe, I don't know if you have a Crumble account, but let's say you don't have a Crumble account. You go to Crumble today, you buy a dozen cookies, you leave. That's the end of that relationship. They don't have your phone number, your email, or anything. But you download the app and you get the free cookie for giving them your email. Well, now they have a way to target you not only through email, but even social channels as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Build lookalike models off of the people that are following them. There's all kinds of fun stuff that they can do around that. But, they're definitely a fun brand, right? I mean, they when you think about them, them just as a brand and the things that they stand for, it's a celebration, right? A cookie is supposed to be something that's fun, and they definitely lean into that from a brand perspective. And I think this leads into this kind of last point here, which is, what is your brand's purpose, and how does that align to different people, kind of where they're at from an age or a generation perspective? So, Zach, I'd love to hear your perspective a little bit more on that.
Yeah, this is conversations I have every day. Why do you exist? Like, what do you do, right? And it's like, well, Gabe, being in the broadband industry, well, we provide fiber. And it's like, okay, so does Spectrum, so does CenturyLink. Everyone does that. But what do you do, and what do you do differently? What do you do, right? And 6 in 10 millennials in that same study I mentioned earlier cited that brand purpose is as important to brand loyalty. And Gen Z and Gen X were not that far behind, 6 in 10 again. And examples of that brand purpose, environmental sustainability is one we see quite often. I think of like every Apple event, they do a big thing about their environmental impact and things around renewable energy. So they're making a big focus on that sustainability and even privacy. We mentioned that one.
Yeah, privacy is another great one for Apple. That I think about that, the Apple logo turning into a lock. God, that was such a good commercial. But it's perfect aligning around what they're about. They're about privacy, and that about Apple.
Mm-hmm. I think the exact message on that ad was, what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone.
Yep.
And it's I feel like, these days privacy is a very good thing to lean into, and being responsible with data as a company as well. Mm-hmm. We also see, Gabe, this is one I think we talk about every day. Everyone tells me like, oh, we're involved in the community, right? Like we do XYZ in the community. So having that sense of community is huge. I'm not aware of any business. I guess there's 50,000 people in my town, but I'm not aware of any real business that doesn't lean into that community aspect, especially if they're a local brand. Like I think of my local credit union, right? Like they're always out in the community active and talking about, hey, come to this free barbecue. We have the college stadium. They'll put a movie on in the summer every week, and you can come to this event. Being active in the community is great, and then localization as well. So especially with, as a smaller company. Like, not everyone is a Starbucks, not everyone is a Crumble, but if you're small business, being local, having that sense of community, I think those will very much establish that brand purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And being really clear about this, and this sort of brings us to the wrap up, Zach, which is, as we think about, some of these challenges that businesses like Starbucks are having right now, where they feel like they're being pulled in two directions with the mobile, quick buy, I just want that revenue, and the original idea of what Starbucks was supposed to be. You need to have a very strong opinion on what your brand is, and don't deviate from that. It's so important to be really purposeful around what it is that you're doing from a brand perspective. If you want to be a premium company, that's great. Please do that. But every decision that you make has to align around being that premium offer. If you want to be the business for everybody, that's fine too. But every decision should be wrapped around that brand guideline of, okay, we are our target market is, men and women 18 to 75. Like, okay, cool. That means you're a business for everybody, versus somebody who's really thinking, about being a specific, a brand for a specific set of people.
And the thing I just kind of thought of here, Gabe, as we're talking about this, but we mentioned one of the purposes of Apple's brand is privacy, right? That was a big thing they focus on. At the beginning of the podcast, we talked about, they're going to bring in AI functionality into iPhones next week, right? Imagine the deviation in even the sentiment towards Apple if next week they said, when you use these features, we're sharing your data with everyone. It's not going to work for them, right? Like, no. You can't choose one and want to be the other, right? Like, you have to, again, stick to your brand.
And I think it's really important too, as we, Zach and I talk a lot about digital and how to, build digital experiences, whether that be through an app, whether that be through just digital conversations over email and targeted social ads, things like that. And obviously it's extremely important to move to a digital framework as well, because you're leaving probably money on the table. But as things move more to digital, you got to consider how those digital interactions are going to impact your overall brand. And again, I know I've been saying this a lot here through this conversation, but this is the exact problem that's happening with Starbucks right now. They wanted to make it easier for their customers to buy. Ultimately, that's a really good thing, but they've made it so easy that they've eliminated what their brand was originally supposed to be, which is that third place vibe. That again was the whole point of what they were trying to do with their original business model. And if they want to shift to be more of the McDonald's of coffee, great, that's fine. But they can't probably charge a premium for their products then, right? They're gonna have to be thoughtful about where they're at from a pricing perspective. So it's finding that balance and figuring out how digital can positively impact your brand versus potentially degrading it.
And don't forget, Gabe, last comment on McDonald's. I'm totally going to end up at McDonald's this week sometime. Like, they made a big shift to coffee a few years ago,
yes.
But like, I remember they were very much going after Starbucks, and they still are. Even in the past month or so, we were talking on the team here because we love donuts and we love snack foods, but McDonald's is teaming up with Krispy Kreme to bring donuts into the menu, right? So there's partnerships like that McDonald's is kind of shifting who their brand is a little bit. But again, McDonald's is that in and out, that grab and go. Starbucks, you mentioned, is that third place. It's going to be interesting to see how those brands evolve as they compete.
Well, and as you see billboards or see ads for McDonald's for coffee specifically, the first thing that you see generally is the price. With Starbucks, you don't see that. They're trying to still be that premium provider. It's talking about the experience that you're going to have when you go into a Starbucks. Whereas, again, McDonald's is just, it's a commodity, right? It's going right to the price of what it is that you're actually going to get. So yeah, that's an interesting one, because you're right. They did start to move into that, but it was moving in at the lower end of the market, right? Trying to get in and just be very aggressive from a price perspective to try and take market share.
After this episode, I'm definitely opening the McDonald's app and checking out the coffee menu. I don't drink coffee, but I'm curious to know like how the two menus compare. So we'll have to update everyone next week as we talk about WWDC. Gabe, I think that is a perfect episode for next week. Let's talk about what's new with Apple, because I think we are going to see some exciting new things next Monday. I'll be watching live if I can. in the background. So any groundbreaking things, I'll make sure I update you, Gabe, and we'll dive deep next week.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, don't forget to give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. And thanks again for listening.